Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Patty Framo here. Today is Monday, December the 10th, 2018. It's 4 p.m. New York time, 1 p.m. Los Angeles time, 9 p.m. London time, and in Sydney, Australia, it is 8 a.m. Good morning, Sydney, and we hope that your Monday is off to a good start wherever you are in the world. And thank you for tuning in and joining us for another Daily Dose of Happy. We are once again live streaming to the Law of Attraction Changed My Life group on Facebook. So if you want to be listening live, that's a good place to catch us. Still have to get the thing going that I've been talking about, Patty, where we can actually share it to multiple places on Facebook, which is going to be a lot of fun. But for the moment, I haven't
That'd be
completed the
nice.
testing on that, so it's on the shelf. It's just not quite there yet. And I'm getting requests for it too, because people are wanting to share outside of the group. And of course, with Facebook, you can only share within the group stuff that's within the group. That's why we want to have these alternative channels. But we're getting there. We'll get there. We'll get there real soon. And it's kind of a fun day because we get to do Q&A, but it's also a little bit of a sad day because Patty's not going to be doing the programming with us a whole lot longer, and that's kind of a sad thing. That it also means she's going to be going on to do some other things with her own life. So I just wanted to tell you, I don't know, we haven't even figured out what the schedule is yet, Patty, but
Yeah.
whenever it happens, I'm going to be sad to have you go, but I'm going to be glad
I
that you're
know,
going to do
me too,
what
me
you want
too.
to do.
I'm gonna miss getting to chat with you.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's
Well,
really been a lot of
we'll have to
fun.
figure out how to get it going at some point anyway, regardless,
There you
even
go.
if it's not scheduled. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And this is, of course, a Q&A, and that means that if you're listening live, we want you to, put in your questions because that's why we do a Q&A. And they have been more successful. We're getting more and more people watching, Patty, when we're doing these Q&As. I think we actually hit record numbers this morning with Louie, and I'm hoping that pattern continues.
Oh, that's cool.
Also, I want to put it out there to people. I've actually been thinking about changing the schedule around for a number of different reasons. Um, I'm thinking about perhaps doing something in the evening. I don't know how many days a week. Maybe cutting. I'm even thinking of cutting down from two to one. Maybe even doing extended sessions. In short, I don't know what I want to do just yet. But I'm putting it out there because I want to find out, is there any input from people? Would people, and this I guess would be mostly for people in the U.S. because we're in the U.S., Patty and I. So an evening session would be perfect for somebody who's looking for something in the evening who lives in the U.S. If you're in the U.S. and you'd like, one or more evening sessions a week, send a message. Just let us know because that's going to impact my decision on when or whether to even change the schedule around.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I mean, we want to try to reach as many people as we can. That's one of the reasons we do this. So, just take a time, send a note, send me a text, send me an email, walt@loatoday.net. Put a comment into one of the video chats, anything. Just let us know whether or not that would be of interest to you, because I will take that into account as I figure out what the heck I want to do.
As we
But in the
all do
meantime,
over and over.
oh, exactly, exactly. Because it occurred to me that you can get stale after a while, and I want to shake things up a little bit and keep things fresh and alive and interesting and fun and so forth. Because hey, we're trying to do a daily dose of happy. You got to mix things up in order to stay happy, right?
Exactly.
So yeah,
Exactly.
so
Yeah, and
that's what
that's
I'm
all part
about.
of the whole law of attraction thing too, because
Absolutely.
that's how we expand,
Yeah.
by constantly having these new desires. It's not like, it's funny,
Right.
I used to think years ago, like, what is wrong with me that I'm always thinking ahead? Why aren't I just, I mean, and it's good to be satisfied where you are, but there's
Hmm.
also something really kind of cool about looking ahead to what's next, what's next, what's next, because it's
Right.
exciting and it's fun.
It is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anytime that we're creating diversity in our lives, we're creating. Period. That's it. We're creating, and that's the best part because creation is where it's at.
but then of course, when you're in that place where you don't know what you want, that can make you go crazy.
Well, it reminds me of one of the best pieces of advice you can give or get about that, and that is if you don't know what you want, ask. And that's kind of what I'm doing. I mean, I'm asking our listeners, but I'm also just kind of putting out to the universe. I'm not
Yeah,
sure what I want. Give me an idea. Give me some
yeah,
thoughts. Give
and
me
it
some.
will.
Yeah, it's definitely going to happen, no doubt about it. And it's
That's
going to be
cool.
fun too to find out what it's going
Yeah,
to be. Oh,
yeah.
and by the way, we already have people piling in with questions, so it's not like
Cool.
we're going to lack any questions today.
All right, cool.
So we can just jump right in here. First of all, people saying hello. We got Bronwyn and Jamie and Deidre all saying hello. Hello, everybody. Deidre has the first question. She says, can you explain what Neville says about God being in us or that God lives as us? That's a great question. A really good question. I don't know how familiar you are with Neville Goddard. Have you read his stuff at
Not
all, Katie?
super familiar. I'm going to let you
No,
handle that one.
okay. Okay. Um, I have to admit, this is a question that we would probably be better at answering tomorrow morning or Wednesday morning or afternoon when I do the podcast with Cindy Chavez, because she's much more of a Neville expert than I am. But I will give it my best shot and tell you that first thing that you have to understand about Neville is that he speaks in code. It's just the simple fact. He does not use words the same way that churches use words. He does not use words the same way that your average person uses words. They have very specific meanings. So, for instance, God is equal in his mind to the imagination,
Huh.
which is not the way usually people think about what God is. But in his mind, God is the imagination. He thinks of the conscious and the subconscious as being metaphorically equivalent to male and female. Not the way we normally think about this kind of thing. So, when we talk about God being in us or God being as us, um, I mean, I know he's used that phrase, and I can't recall exactly which of his books that's in. So there's probably something specific to that. And if you can tell me, Deidre, if you know which book that's in, I've got my Neville treasury here, so I can look it up and see exactly what the context is. But in general, whenever he's talking about God, he's talking about our imagination because that's the creative power. And he refers to biblical verses for the purpose of drawing that connection. And he even makes the connection very explicitly at times. In fact, actually, it's in the book that we're currently working on. Cindy and I are working on The Power of Awareness. We're about halfway through that one. And I don't remember which chapter, but he very explicitly says that the imagination is God. God is the imagination. So if you understand it from that context, from that perspective, then clearly God in us, God as us, well, just replace the word God with imagination. God, imagination in us, imagination as us. Now it starts to make more sense because imagination, well, of course, imagination is in us. Our imagination isn't out there, it's in here. And secondly, we are creating with our imagination. That's the as us part. Now, he may have more specific information in mind than that. Again, I can't remember the exact context where that phrase comes from. But that's the way I'd look at it. I'd look at it the way he looks at it, which is God is the imagination. Very simple.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Wow,
he is.
I can see how that gets a little mind-boggling.
Oh, it gets a lot mind-boggling. That's why Neville. That's why Cindy and I invented the Neville Goddard decoder ring. Because the decoder ring is how you basically take all of his stuff and translate it into language that you and I can understand. Because otherwise, you read his stuff and you say, "What? What did he just say?"
Well, that reminds me of Eckhart Tolle in Power of Now, where you
Oh,
have
why?
to, I don't know if you've ever attacked that book or not, but oh my gosh, it's like
Yeah.
literally I would take a sentence and have to read it 20 times
Yeah, right.
because it was so dense and you had to
Mm.
really think about it and think about it. So hence I got, maybe a page into that book and I was like, I can't do it.
Yeah, that's kind of that's one of the reasons I was glad to have Cindy, because Cindy is so well read. She is quite the student of everything and anything religious, spiritual, mindful, all that stuff. I mean, she has done extensive studying of the Talmud. She's learned Hebrew. She has extensive studying of Christianity. She has probably explored all of the metaphysical thought systems and religions on the face of the planet. And because she has so much knowledge and understanding of the etymology of words, their origins, where they came from, how they developed over time, that she's able to connect things together in ways that I just sit back and I marvel. I say, "Go, Cindy, go! This is great."
See,
But
it's
she's
funny
actually,
because that's one of the things about law of attraction that attracts me, for me
mm,
personally, is because it's so simple. I
yeah,
mean, it's got many layers to it, but it's
it
just
does.
so practical and down to earth and simple overall,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah,
know.
that's
Yeah,
true. It's true.
yeah, it's
And for all that
interesting.
simplicity, it's like we often like to say, it's simple, but it isn't easy.
It's true.
It's so simple to understand, but then you try to apply it, and the multiplicity of possible ways of handling stuff just becomes overwhelming.
That and when
I'm
other people come into the mix and their energy's
Oh,
involved, and
God, yes.
it does get a little more challenging, yeah.
It gets a lot more challenging, yeah, and it's also a lot more fun. Well, it's one of the reasons we have a daily dose of happy. It gives us a podcast to do because
Exactly.
there's so much to talk about, which is it's a good thing. It's a very good thing.
Yeah.
So, wow, people are just pouring in the comments here. What is going on?
Cool.
Oh, let's see. Well, Nasha's jumped in. Nasha is sharing all kinds of stuff with Deidre. Oh my God, this is just going on. Uh, Yes. Oh, and Deidre says yes, and Jesus is the imagination in action, right? Yeah, and that's true. That's another Neville concept. God is the imagination. Jesus is the imagination in action. That's exactly right. Um, oh, Nasha says, Walt, this wise woman Deidre has kept me alive. She's an ocean of knowledge. So I didn't realize this. I was being set up by like an expert mystic here. No, I'm just kidding. That's great, though. That's great to have somebody who dives into it that much. Wow. Patricia's saying good afternoon. Oh, Nasha says she's her coach. Oh, Carlos is here. Hey, Carlos, how you doing? A lot of people jumping in here. This is great. Um, Nasha says we have a question. Okay, so let's see. What's your question? Oh, it's like she and Deidre had the question. I think I got confused from early teachings of my former religion where I dare not think so much of myself as God being in me. Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a big thing because, well, religions. I mean, I'm curious to know what your opinion is on this, Patty, but religions, particularly the major religions, are I don't mean to be, putting them down or anything, but they're mainly about perpetuating their own religions, perpetuating their own belief systems, and they can get kind of territorial, maybe,
Yeah. Yeah.
or I'm not
Kind
sure
of
what
like
exactly it
kind of
is.
like we're right. And yeah.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
funny because I was brought up Catholic,
Hmm.
although Italian Catholic, which is pretty loosey-goosey. And I remember sitting, I remember sitting in catechism when I was about 6 and learning, some of the concepts and thinking, this does not fit me at all. I remember distinctly
Mm.
thinking that at the time, like that you're not supposed to question things, that I don't understand this. It didn't make any sense to me at all. And over the years, for me with religion, it was sort of trying out lots of different, learning about different religions, trying them on for size for a short time when I was in about 13, and you're in that angsty place of life.
Mm.
I was a born again Christian for about a year,
Hmm.
and ultimately that wasn't feeling like it fit me anymore. And in college, I studied all, Hinduism and Buddhism and all that, and a lot of them, made sense in some ways, but there was nothing that really felt like, yeah, this is right. It all was like, well, yeah, that sounds kind of interesting, and it wasn't really till well, then I had started going to Unity Church for a while,
Mm.
which is part of religious science, and that's very open and um, not very like, it's kind of like you believe what you believe, and everything's
Hmm.
fine, whatever you believe,
Right.
which I like.
Yeah, that's
But
good.
I find that I not tend not to be too much of a churchy person. And for me, that's where Law of Attraction with Abraham Hicks just totally was like, this
Mhm.
completely fits. It just felt, I just got so excited when I found it because it felt so
Yeah.
right to me.
Yeah, exactly.
You
I
know?
mean, you hear her receiving this information, and it's a little weird at first because she's claiming to receive this information from a group of non-physical entities, and you say, "Oh yeah, okay, right."
Yeah, yeah,
But then you
exactly.
hear what she has to say. You hear the information. You say, "Dang, that I agree with that. I agree with that.
Yeah,
That sounds right. Wow, that really resonates." And after a while, you say to yourself, "When was the last time she said something I didn't resonate
right.
with?"
And it's so consistent.
Yeah,
No
yeah,
matter
it's really,
who, no matter when, no matter what, it's very consistent. But you're right. I agree with all of it. I have yet
yeah.
to find anything I don't agree with. And I don't think, I think in the beginning when I first was listening to it, I wasn't really putting it all together that it was this group of non-physical beings that were speaking through her. I think I kind of just put that aside and thought, well, whatever, who cares? I don't need to really think about that part. and just sort of took the pieces that fit for me. But now I kind of buy into it all, hook, line, and sinker.
That's cool.
It's pretty woo woo, but it really fits. Looks like you're reading some comments.
Well, I'm trying to, yeah, there's a lot of
Talk
commentary being added
back
here,
and
and I'm
forth.
trying to,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm trying to, Nasha said, can someone please explain to me this? But I'm not sure what is, Nasha, that you're looking for the explanation on. Is it something that I've touched on already or that we've been touching on already? I'm not sure what you're asking about. Oh, Carlos. Oh, Carlos is coming in with a question. This is cool. He says, do you think you block yourselves from manifesting things sometimes because of old patterns? And does the universe continue to send us the same situation until we learn what we needed to from it?
I
Let's
think
think about
we
that.
tend to recreate them ourselves. I don't think the universe is sending us stuff from the past. I mean,
Okay.
Abraham talks a lot about that,
Hmm.
where I absolutely we keep recreating those old patterns, but I think it's because it's still in our vibration. It's still
Hmm.
there, and
Hmm.
it just keeps resurfacing and resurfacing and resurfacing. If we work at it or if we play at it, I should say, um, I feel like over time we can change some of those patterns and they can become less activated in our everyday lives. But the past stuff really it colors where we're at, but we don't have to let it.
It's true.
We don't have
Yeah,
to.
it's our choice. It's completely our choice. And
But
I
yeah,
agree
so
with you.
does the universe send it, or are we just recreating it within ourselves because of that vibration? That's a good question.
Um, I mean, I suppose it depends a lot on how you look at things and how you want to think about things. For myself, I think we're creating all the time. We may not realize
Right.
that we're creating all the time. And just because we're creating doesn't mean that we aren't relying on or using data and information and ideas that come to us. I mean, that's part of being, we're all part of the same energy stream, right? We're all source energy. And so we're all connected in that way. That means we're going to be getting stuff coming to us. Um, I tend to agree with you on the idea, though. It's not like the universe is an entity that is sending us stuff. It's more like it's a stream. It's like, if you're, you can kind of say that if you're by the water's edge and there's a river flowing by and something flows down the river and comes to you on the river, that the river sent that to you. No, that would be a
Hmm.
nice metaphorical way of saying it. But is there
Hmm.
an actual being called the river? And hi, I'm the river. I'm going to send you a boat. That's not the way it really is. It's just we
Yeah.
describe it metaphorically that something came to us on the river. But
And I think things do come to us, but the way they come to us is by us attracting them through matching that vibration.
yes,
So we've got this vibration going on and other thoughts that are like it, especially if we go over that 16-second mark and that 68-second mark,
right.
we start attracting and it gains momentum. So that those thoughts gain momentum and then that vibration, we're vibrating at the vibration. We're going to just start pulling in other thoughts and other situations that match that vibration. So
Hmm.
in essence, we're the universe,
Well, it's
really.
true. Yeah, but we're part and parcel of it. So yeah, I mean, it's not like it's separate from us. And
Hmm.
the universal connection is within. So it certainly makes sense in that way too. By the way, I want to encourage anybody. We are taking questions through the comments section, but Carlos made me think of this because Carlos is also a host. He does the Tuesday afternoon and Friday afternoon shows with us. Carlos, you already have the information for connecting in via Blue Jeans. If you want to connect and join Patty and I,
Yeah,
by all
join
means,
us,
come on.
Carlos. I'd
That'd be
love to
great
meet
to
you.
have you come in. And anybody else. I mean, if it's not like you have to ask questions through the comments section. Connect in. The link is in. If you haven't done it before, the link is in the description for the post if you're listening to the live stream. But just come right in and talk because we'd love to have that too. Now,
Yeah.
Nacho had a follow-up to the Neville question. She said, "For years I've been trying to understand it, but I don't understand the concept. How is God imagination?" Yeah, and that's the challenging thing about Neville. That's why we call it the Neville decoder ring, because if we want to think about the words that he uses, like God, like Jesus, all these various names and concepts that come from religion, we have to kind of let go of the old definitions, and that's
Hmm.
hard to do, because especially if we have a
Yay,
lot.
I see Carlos. Hi,
Oh,
Carlos.
there he is. Hey, Carlos, how
Nice to
you
meet
doing?
you.
All right. Let me make
Good.
sure
Yeah,
you
this
answer
is
that.
actually better because I can kind of explain more of my question. So, you guys touched on it a little bit, but the reason I ask is because some of these patterns you don't even realize that you're doing. So I just realized something, a couple of days ago, that I kind of this mentality that I had because of the way that I grew up, and I
Hmm.
just thought that was normal. That everybody thinks like this, and it was kind of blocking me from what is reality, because a lot of times our realities is what we kind of create in our mind. And
Right.
so um but my question was because it did, that realization came to me at a specific time. I feel like it could have happened 10 years ago, it could have happened 5 years ago, but it didn't. It happened when it did. And so that's why I was just curious about kind of what you guys thought about. And to your point, if we are the universe, and I guess we are sending it to ourselves, and and so we are kind of doing that. But yeah, that's kind of where I was coming from with that question there.
That's
Can
cool.
you talk about the specifics of that circumstance, like what it was that came up?
Oh yeah, I guess I could talk about it. I mean, it's just really, for me, it was it's a dating thing. So it was like, man, um, I was talking to a friend of mine and really kind of going into like, um, when I feel comfortable dating, and she's like, oh, I was like, oh, I'm not making as good money as I used to, and so I kind of, until I do make some more money, then I don't even try, or I just kind of don't even put myself. And she's like, well, why is that? And kind of got into it, and it was really just how I grew up was with my my mom telling, oh, this is what women look for. So you have to have a great job, and just the stuff that you get told.
You get taught.
Really,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's kind of a nonchalant thing. You don't even realize it, and then I was talking to her. She's like, you know what, Carlos? Like, you don't have to. You don't have to have certain criteria in order to be able to accept love, or be to able to even put yourself out there to. And it kind of just and it was just a realization that kind of unwinded from talk that we were having. But
Yeah, it's
yeah,
funny
just
how
kind of curious because
things
again, it seems like yeah,
I find it funny how, I mean, it's funny that you're even bringing this up right now because I'm working on this quiz for one of the things I coach in is helping people with relationship issues, not attracting the same wrong person over and over again. And
right,
it's really funny how those patterns from our childhood are these like grooves in a record that keep going
right.
round and that needle keeps falling back into that groove again and again and again. And it is interesting, though, to see over time how we can modify that. How can we make those changes and grow and modify the type of person that we're attracting if we're attracting the same wrong person over and over? And where is it coming from? And
Yeah, we were
sometimes
Right.
I
talking
think,
about that this morning. This morning when Louis and I talked about it, he says, a lot of people say you have to change your pattern. You have to rewrite the old tapes and so forth. He says, to heck with rewriting the old tapes. Just lay down some new pipes. Just replace the
yes,
pipeline entirely.
yep,
Yeah.
it's
I think there's
true.
truth to that. Yeah, there's a lot of truth.
Yeah.
If it's really going to be too much work and too crazy to try to rewrite the old stuff, just start fresh. Put down a new pipeline.
Hmm. Exactly,
And
exactly.
it's funny just realizing it. It's like, oh, now, and this happened to me just recently with my career. Same thing. It's like, oh, I grew up, and this is what I was supposed to do. This is what everybody's supposed to. And then you realize, wait, that's not true. That's kind of that's that's a deception, right? That's not really
It's
how.
sloppy thinking. Yeah.
Right.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, just curious. I mean, I think that, but once that happened to me, that mentality shift in my career, now then, wow, look how I took off this way. And so, in relationship, I mean, this just happened, like I said, a few days ago, but I already feel, better and able to, almost open to manifesting that now. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
good. Well, that's a good
It's a
realization.
shift. It's a shift.
It is.
Right.
And it's really, I mean, it's a shift in your thinking, which really causes an energetic shift. And then all this other stuff can come in that you've
Right.
shifted to, that new idea that you've shifted to. Yeah. Huh, that's cool.
That's
Huh.
good.
So
And
what are you
and
hoping? Go
yeah,
ahead,
go ahead.
Walt.
No, no.
I was just going to say, what are you hoping for? What would you like it to look like?
Like what to look like? I'm sorry.
To just the relationship, the whole, your
Oh, I
job, what it
mean,
is that
I,
you're.
yeah, I just, it's just kind of, you talked a little bit about the power of now, and I read that book also, um, and so you're right. Sometimes it's heavy, but then also I feel like when I reread it, then certain texts will jump out that you need kind of too at the
Yeah,
same time.
yeah.
So it's like, oh, I'm not getting this, but maybe it's not for me right now. But no, just I just through that process of just kind of letting go of the ego little by little, you're able to like this is when I've been finding ability to manifest in these different areas as you let go of these out external things that are kind of controlling the internal story. Does that make sense? Kind of taking
So
back
not
control.
not not necessarily just observing what you're experiencing in your life and letting that create your thoughts, but deciding
Yeah,
what it
yeah,
is
yeah.
you want and letting that create what you're going to manifest
Exactly. It's
the
like
other way.
and for the relationship thing was just yeah, I just feel like I'm not even in the game sometimes because of certain criteria that in my mind I haven't met, or
Yeah,
I'm not meeting right now. And so for me, it's like just the ability to feel confident, just
yeah,
being,
yeah,
and
yeah,
not
yeah.
having these things that if I'm not this, then I'm not worthy of this, or if I don't have that, then
And it's funny because
but
it's
yeah,
not the thing, it's not having the thing that makes you not attract the right person. It's having it's the word self-worth issues that are really putting that energy out. So if
right,
exactly, if you're more able to feel comfortable with just who you are and what you have and to offer just in terms of who you are as a person, that's when you're going to be attracting the right kind of people for that.
right, and I think that even like you said, that pattern, or that thought process that I had before had me attracting the same kind of person. It's like, and then it's like, oh man, this is not working out. And we talk about, trying to manifest a kind of partner that we want, but it's like, yeah, if you're trying to manifest this way, but your patterns are taking you another way, that's where
Yeah.
you kind of get that conflict. So, yeah, no,
So
that was
it's just about feeling good about it's just about feeling good about yourself wherever you are.
right.
And then how do
Yeah, and
we
that's
do
a
that?
process. I know everybody. Yeah, I know we're all trying to do that daily. So,
Yeah. What?
absolutely. Well, thank
Yeah,
you guys for
absolutely.
answering my question.
Well, it actually ties into the
Thanks
question
for
that
coming
Nasha was
with
asking,
me.
because Nasha was asking about the idea that Neville puts out of God is the imagination, and she was trying to understand that more. And then she added a follow up. She said, "So we are God, and we create our own reality. Can you kindly explain more about that? What does that mean?" Is what she's asking. What does it mean to say that we're God creating our own reality? And I'll speak for myself. I think what it means is we all connect to source energy. What's source energy? Source energy is the energy of all that is. It is the energy of creation, and we are all connected to it. We are all a part of it. We all use it in our daily lives. I mean, every time that we create something in our minds, every time that we're thinking about what it is we want or don't want, shooting those rockets of desire that Abraham talks about, anytime that we're trying to deal with things, deal with relationships, deal with financial situations, deal with our health, deal with work situations, whatever it is, all of that we're doing in our roles as connected beings in that source energy flow. So that I think is what we mean by being we are God, we are creating, because we are part of that whole process. And when you just kind of take the fact that there are billions of us alive on the planet, plus countless I don't know how many gazillions of us who are in the non-physical, and you just add that all up, you got this almost endless number of individual beings who are all connected, all doing creating all the time. And the godness of that just becomes more than I can calculate. But to me, it's easier just to think about it in terms of each one of us playing our role as the God within.
And it's
So,
funny because I feel like sometimes the word God trips us up a little bit, you know?
oh,
I
it
mean, because
definitely does.
God sounds like it's this external, like here's this guy in the sky or this external,
Right.
um, you know, being that's not us.
That's an
And
interesting thing too, because when we put God in the sky, I love the way you said that, God in the sky. When we put God in the sky, what we're really doing is putting ourselves down. We're saying all the power is over there. We don't have any power. And the fact is we
And
do
we're
have.
separating ourselves from it.
And we're separate. Yeah, it's like all of a sudden we're like the little playthings that were created. We're just here to be God's playthings, and that's about it. And and that is so understating the power that we have. We have tremendous power. It's power that we're still learning how to use, perhaps. We're still learning how to master it
And
in
I
a
feel like it
conscious way.
really is kind of a co-creative process with us
Very,
and the universe. It's not
definitely,
even like we get to help. I feel like it's more of an equal,
absolutely.
um, I don't know how to even explain that, but
No, I think
I
you're right.
feel like
It is
it's
equal.
kind of a, yeah.
Because
Yeah, it's
because if you're
interesting.
if you're not an active creator, then are you really? It's almost redundant. If you're not an active creator, are you a creator? You
Right.
really are.
Well, we are. We're creator by default. So
Yeah,
it's why they called, called it, used to call it the act of deliberate or the art of deliberate creation.
the
They
art of
changed it to the art
creation.
of allowing so that we
Right,
weren't doing so much efforting and so much action, but
right.
it is totally our creation. And
Yep.
that's sort of freaky at the same, even just that thought in itself is a little bit freaky.
Well, Deidre said it really nicely in her response to now. She said if we can really get into the feeling, the knowing of being God, that is a sure way to feel confident. And boy, is that true. Because when you're
Hmm.
in that feeling, you do feel confident. It's like, oh
Yeah.
wow, the world is my oyster because I can
Right.
just keep creating.
You
That's a
feel
good place.
powerful. Yeah.
You do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
And in
good questions
control.
though. But we haven't done
Yeah.
anything like this deeply, spiritual in a long time on the podcast. So thanks for bringing up these questions, everybody.
They're
I'm really
great.
here to see if there's anything else, but that people have been asking. Um, did we address your question, Carlos? I don't know if we finished that.
I think he disappeared.
Oh, he
I
did.
think he
Okay,
had
so I
to go,
guess he was
yeah.
done. Okay, well that's all right.
He looked like he was in a car. Maybe he had to go.
Oh yeah, here it is. Right. Yeah. Thanks for having me on and answering my questions. Have to run.
Yeah,
Keep it up.
thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah. I love it when Carlos comes on.
Yeah, it's
Plus
great.
he's a funny guy, and
Yeah,
that's it's great when you have somebody who has really good sense of humor talking about this stuff. And we have a few people who are like that. But it turns the study of this stuff into happiness
yeah.
because there's always that
Well,
joy
it's
of
like what
seeing.
Abraham does. When Abraham's talking, Abraham's hysterical.
Oh
I
yeah,
think really funny. And
it's
makes it,
true.
yeah, takes it all from being all airy-fairy to down and dirty.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the thing that's really kind of eerie, it isn't so much that they're non-physical beings, it's that how quickly they can get to the core of a topic really, really quickly. They'll just cut right through all of the outside junk and you're right down at the core instantly. That
And
that's that's
it's
a skill.
also, very interesting to see how sometimes people will come on who will be like grief-stricken or crying or really
Hmm.
depressed, and
Yeah.
Abraham will have none of it
Yeah.
because they're like, well, we can't go down to them, so we're going to
Hmm.
have to bring them up, and they just sort of ignore it almost and cut right to the heart of the matter in
Hmm.
a way that's trying to uplift them. It's very interesting. I mean, being a social worker and working, mostly with hospice, I mean, you're coming from a very different perspective where you're kind of to a certain extent. And with Abraham, it's you do not go to that level.
Mm.
You instead come from, but it's
Well, you
funny,
could try, but it won't work.
yeah. And having said that, I feel like earlier on in my career when I first was doing social work and hospice, I would be crying right along with the clients sometimes. And I feel
Mm.
like now, I have a lot of compassion for them, but I don't feel I've got, I don't know. I don't know if it's because my vibration's higher or if I have better boundaries or what, but I don't find myself dipping down into that
Mm.
place so much anymore. I can feel for them, but not go down there, which I feel like is kind of what
Healthy.
Abraham does.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. And they simply, you're right. They simply won't allow themselves to dip down, way, way down into those dark, dark feelings because it's not first of all, it's not a particularly pleasant place to be. But second of all, you can't create from that place. I mean,
Hmm.
that's the thing that we kind of tend to overlook. When we are in our lowest, most unhappy, depressed, angry, frustrated states, we are not in a creative state. We are in a
No.
state where we can put out that what they call that rocket of desire. because okay, I
Hmm.
know I don't like this thing I'm in right now. I want something that's, quite different from this, something that I
Yeah,
might think of as being the opposite of this. But we
it's our
can't really create
contrast.
that place. The
Hmm.
contrast is huge in that place. But
Hmm.
creation can't really happen until we climb out of
Right.
that.
And
And
all it's so funny because when we're in that place, it feels so heavy and dark and deep, but it's really just us resisting lining
yes,
up with our inner being. There's
which
that
is also hard to
flow
remember.
coming, flow coming, flow coming, flow coming, and we're
Hmm.
doing something to resist it, and that's why it feels bad.
Yeah,
It's not even the
but it's also
circumstance.
but it's hard to remember that because when we're
I
in the middle
know.
of it, it feels like it's the circumstances that are doing it to us, right? It's
It's
got to be that it's
true.
that person over there who is making me so unhappy.
I know, I know. It's this job that I hate. It's whatever.
Yes.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
And when you're there, you're in that place. Gosh, it's so hard. You're like reaching, trying to find that next better feeling thought. And sometimes it's just hard to even remember this stuff. It's so
Hmm.
interesting how that happens.
But on the plus side, and I know of people who are in really dire circumstances, really difficult circumstances, and I know you do too because of the work that you do. So it's not like we aren't familiar with what that's like, and we aren't sympathetic to it. But by the same token, I just continue to be impressed and amazed and almost astounded at how, when people are in that place and they're climbing out, they become incredibly strong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's inspiring. It's
It
inspiring.
is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've
And
seen that. And it's just amazing to me how
it,
some people just they're dying and they're caring for the people around them even more. I mean, they're so okay with it. They're so
mhm.
accepting of where they're at, and their main concern is for the people around them to make sure they're okay. I mean, it's just amazing. It's just amazing how some people are in
It's
those
right in tune with what
circumstances.
Abraham talks about, because Abraham makes fun of death. I mean,
Hmm.
they literally just make
Croaking,
fun of it. The
croaking.
croaking, yeah,
Yeah.
they are as disrespectful, in their own words, as disrespectful of death as they can possibly be,
Yeah,
because they
yeah,
want to take away the like the veil of tears that we humans put around death. Because from their perspective, it's actually just this natural, wonderful thing that happens, and it's not like when you die, you're done forever. You continue to go on. You just go on as a non-physical being. And every story that I've ever heard, whether it be from Abraham, from other spiritual sources, people who are mediums or psychics or whatever, every story I've ever heard talks about how absolutely joyously wonderful it is when you cross over.
yeah, yeah.
You know,
And it's
which
funny, I've heard I think it was Deepak Chopra who talked about when there's when you're in a room and the walls are taken down, the room is still there. And it's the
yeah.
same way, it's just the walls aren't there, and it's the same way with our bodies and when we die, that the body's
Mhm.
gone, but we're still here. It's just the body piece that's gone, just that physical piece. And I
So,
feel like,
oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead,
No, no,
go ahead.
finish your thought.
Okay, I was gonna say, I feel like with you know, being in the business where I'm watching people die and also their loved ones be around them be very upset, it's amazing how people that have a belief system who believe that their spirit goes on and that's not just the end fare so much better than people
Mm,
who feel like that's just it. And they
mhm.
really struggle because it feels so final.
Yeah, yeah.
And I myself feel like if, this has helped me in my work to feel
Hmm.
more okay about the whole process because I know that they're still that's still going to be there. It's just that body that's going to be gone.
It's a great point, and it almost tempers what I was going to say. I mean, I was going to point out that people who are nearing the end of their lives and people who are very young are both actually very close to that source connection in a way that most of us kind of in the middle of our lives, somewhere in the middle, don't have that closeness of connection because the people who are young, who 3, 4, 5 years old, whatever, they have so recently come from the non-physical that they still have that strong connection going there. Which is kind of funny. You talked about how when you were like 5 or 6 years old, you were in a catechism class and they were teaching you, the Catholic catechism, and it didn't feel right to you. And the thought that was going through my mind was, of course it didn't feel right to you. You had just much more recently than them been connected to the real
Right.
source, and you knew, no, that's not the way it actually is. You
Right.
knew that better than they did. So
Right.
we can actually learn a lot more
Yeah.
from the young person, and the young person can learn from us about what it is,
Yeah.
what it's
Yeah.
like on the other side. And I think similarly, the same thing happens with somebody who knows that they're coming to the end. I mean, Abraham says it very explicitly. We all decide when we're going to die. They don't pull any punches about that. Every single one of us decides when we're going to die. And what that means is we all decide when we're done with living in this body and moving on as an eternal being that never dies, as a source energy being, to whatever next experience it is we're going to take up after we leave the body behind. And so as we get to the end there, I think what happens is we become more in alignment with that, regardless of what we're going through. You mentioned people who don't have the belief system, and I've known people like that. Interesting story I can tell you. My wife's father was like that. He was very non-religious. He was born Jewish and raised in a Jewish family, but was completely non-practicing all of his life. And my wife was actually a little bit concerned when he came to the end of his life. He actually died 3 months after Louise and I married. In fact, there's a whole story that's involved about how the hospital kind of jacked up his body so he could walk her down the aisle. They gave him a complete
Oh,
reflushing so that he could do that, and he did. And he passed the following December, a few days after Christmas. Um, but when he passed, Louise was so concerned because she knew he didn't have a belief system. And I said, Louise, you're forgetting. Once you cross over, it doesn't matter what your belief system was here. Once you cross over, you find out what it's like. He's in a good place. And she said, oh yeah, that's right. And that helped her, restabilize and realign. A few weeks later, I don't remember exactly how long. It may have been months. I can't remember exactly. This was back in 1999, 2000. Because we married in 99, and I think it was in 2000 that we got this information. He had, first of all, my wife's mother had died when Louise was 21, I think. So she had died fairly early in Louise's life. Her
mm,
mother was like 56, 57, died of a second stroke.
wow,
And
wow.
then there was a long period of time where there was no mother figure, and her father had dated somebody, and that hadn't worked out. And then he met this other person named Ruth, who he ended up remarrying and was with for the rest of his life. Um, Now, Ruth, when she first came along, she and Louise didn't hit it off at all. They actually were like oil and water. They were,
Oh boy.
that actually turned into a good relationship in the long run. But the point of my story is that when Ruth came along and brought along with her family, Ruth had two children of her own, Jonathan and Laura. I mean, Jonathan and Liz. Laura is Jonathan's wife. But Jonathan and Louise now became step siblings, right? And of course, Louise has her brother Paul and her sister Lee. So there's like the step sibling relationship there. And even after her father passed, that relationship continued. Well, Jonathan got in touch one day and said that he had received a message from Leonard, who was Louise's father. And the message was essentially one of capitulation, saying, everything that I thought is not true, everything that I have been told is true. All the good things we were told about what it's like on the other
Wow.
side, they're all true.
Don't you
And that was
love
the message.
that?
And I'm thinking, wow, what a message.
Wow.
And
And
it,
it's funny because so many people who, when they're getting close to death, see people, their loved ones who have died around them
yeah,
and always find it comforting, never find it scary. They're always very comforted by it.
yeah.
And
And
sometimes it
all the
freaks
stories
out
I've heard,
their,
well, yeah, the people still here get freaked
yeah,
out
they're
about
like,
it.
what? Are they
Yeah,
hallucinating? It's
yeah.
like, well, we see it a
But
lot, you know?
But again, we also hear from the psychics and everybody who has very strong spiritual connections. They report the same thing. When we die, the loved ones who are on the other side are all gathered there, and this is big celebration. Like, hooray, you made it! Hooray, what a wonderful life! Blah 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 blah
Like when
blah.
we had Julie Edwards on the show that time, when she was talking about how
Yes.
they're all that diagram of where people stand, like I mean, I don't know if you went into that. I read or like got the book that she was talking about that she wrote,
Mm, right.
and talks about how as people are dying, at the foot of their bed, it's like the same pattern of relationships for everybody, and saying that the
Mm,
mother and the father are always at the foot of the bed. Like it's really interesting.
hmm.
So, I don't know if that's, who knows how exactly accurate that is, or that's her
I don't know.
interpretation of it. But just the fact that consistently people feel welcomed by
Mm,
those who have passed, during that transition period. And how comforting would that be?
It was true with us when my father passed. My father passed in March 2008. And within days after that, my sister got a contact from him. And I've told this story a number of times. But during the contact, the first thing my sister asked was, "What's it like on the other side?"
Yeah,
No, you
yeah.
just passed. My sister is sitting with my mom in church a few days after my dad had passed. They're listening to
Wow.
a sermon, all this, and here she is saying, "Well, so what's it like on the other side?"
Wow.
And the answer she got back from my dad was that it was festive on the other side. So once again, reinforcing the idea that it's a great big celebration over there, you
Yeah.
know?
Pure positive energy.
And then you add the fact that over there, we call it, over there, the other side and so forth, is all really in the same space that we're in right now. I mean, this is actually a pretty crowded space. I don't know if you
Isn't
if you
that
ever thought
crazy?
about that way, but it
Yeah.
really is. I mean, everybody's here, it's not like
At least energetically. Yeah.
they're not all over there or something like that. They're here. They're right here.
Yeah.
We just don't see them
Yeah.
necessarily. But and there are some people who do see them, and they're called crazy.
Mhm.
Isn't that true?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
way it's often treated. Um, so, I mean, obviously, what you and I are talking about is what you and I believe, and there may be other people who believe differently, and that's fine. But I just think about all the different stories I've heard and how similar they are. The similarity is
Yeah.
just quite overwhelming, even though they're a little bit foreign to what our religious sensibilities might tell us. Nevertheless, there is a very strong commonality to them. Trying to see, do we have any questions that people have been asked? Oh, we've got a lot of conversation. Oh my
Oh,
goodness,
cool. Okay.
a whole lot of
Let's hear
conversation.
about it.
Let's see. Do we have? First, I'm looking to see if there are questions. I always want to try to get the questions first. I'm not seeing questions. So, well, Deirdre's been really putting out all kinds of stuff. Well, okay, she says, let's see. No, she was talking to Nasha there. Well, Nasha and Deidre have been having this big conversation. That's what's
Too
mostly
bad
here.
they're not on here having that
We should
conversation.
have
I'd
them
love
on
to
the
hear
program. I mean, come on, guys, connect
it.
in. Join the program.
Love to hear
That's
it.
why we do this. Um, let's see. What are some of the things that Deidre's been saying? She says, I still struggle with the feeling, but I'm practicing going to bed and waking up saying I am. And as I do that, I think of God telling us who He is. I am. This is part of an ongoing conversation that they've been having. Nasha says, exactly, the I am. Oh, here's a question. Oh, geez, I hope I pronounced this right. It's either Mignon or Mignon. I'm not sure. Is saying, how do we shift from low to a high vibration?
Well,
That's a question you and I can
that's
tackle.
a doozy.
Yeah,
That's a
we can tackle
great
that one.
question.
This will take us through the rest of the hour for sure. We could probably
I
go
know.
longer.
I know it's true. I mean, we've talked about this before, and this is such a
Mm,
great question because
yeah.
everybody ends up in a low vibration from time. I mean, we
Hmm.
just do. That's just the way it is. We get the contrast, and we've got step one coming up again. So, how to go to a higher vibration from lower vibration? I mean, part of that, there's many answers, many ways to do it, but one is to take a nap. One is to slow down that momentum of negative vibration and negative thoughts. That could be
Hmm.
meditation, going outside, taking a nap. Um, Another way we've talked about is pivoting away from those negative thoughts. When we're in that low vibration, we've got negative thoughts going on, whether
Hmm.
we're consciously aware of them or not. It helps to sort of what am I thinking and how am I feeling? And,
Right.
in the book Asking It Is Given, where they have that emotional scale, I think
Hmm.
sometimes identifying where we're at on that emotional scale can be really helpful. And
Yep.
then, there's all those great processes in the back of the book on
Yep.
raising your vibration. But as we talked about before, there's very few that are for when you're in a really low vibration, there's very few that address that. But some that really do, um, are even just reaching for that next better feeling thought. And if
Hmm.
we're in the pits of despair, completely hopeless, even just thinking of any next better feeling thought, whether it's related to the topic or not, is going to be really helpful to start to shift that vibration.
And it's
Even
a
if it means
strange thing.
going into anger.
Well, exactly. That's what's so
Yeah.
strange about it. Because you could be in depression, anger could be higher up on the scale, and it's not like we think about, geez, I want to get angry because anger, that's a great place to be. That's not the way we think about it. But
But it's
nevertheless,
better.
it's better. It feels better.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and it's a good way to get stuff out just by being angry. Like, I am so angry. I'm angry about
Yeah.
X, Y, and Z, and here's why I'm angry about it. It feels better when you express it. Much better
Yeah.
than just keeping it in and saying,
Hmm.
Now
I
that
agree.
feels
It's funny, as you mentioned that, I may have talked about this on the show before in the past, but at one point in time, I was in a super, super, super low vibration after my divorce and blah, blah, blah. And ended up kind of taking one of the processes in the back of the book and modifying it to a certain extent. And what worked for me is I was on a long car ride, about a 2-hour car ride. And I started by looking where I was on that emotional scale within the book on that one page where it lists all the emotions and realizing I was down in that hopeless depression, despair place. So what I did
mm,
was I took that and said out loud to myself in the car, because I was all alone, what all the things that I was hopeless about. And I just ranted and raved and cried and blah blah blah. Went just dumped, did a total dump of all the things I was hopeless about, till I was like completely drained. And at that point where I'm like, okay, well I can't think of anything else I'm hopeless about. And looked back at
yeah, right.
and I looked back at that emotional scale and saw that I was now in, let's say, I don't know, anger. So then I went into what are all the things I'm angry about? And I just got I just sort of vented
Wow.
and vented and vented. And it moved me up and up and up as I got everything out and had no more things I could think of to about overwhelm. And that was about as high as I could get. But that was a huge leap
Oh
from
yeah.
hopeless to overwhelm. And it
I mean,
was
when
it
you
was amazingly effective in a long-term way, where really I
sure.
never really got quite back down to that total hopelessness again. So
Yeah, absolutely.
just
No,
one
I agree
thought.
with you. No, it's a good thought, and I agree completely. It's amazing. First of all, it's amazing that we can move up the scale at all. I mean, finding
Hmm.
that was a big breakthrough for me is discovering I actually could move my own scale. I could move my own set point. And then learning how to do it and how to do it on demand is even more cool because that gives you that feeling of control, of ability to actually, have a say over your own life and so forth. So I think it's a fabulous thing to be able to do that and to practice doing that. Now, Nasha asked a follow-up question. This is a really interesting follow-up question. She says, so why do people who commit suicide survive when they want to die? So if death is in our hands, then let's see. So the English is a little bit contorted, so I'm going to try to translate it. So if death is in our hands, then why is it there are some people who are still alive? That's essentially what she's asking.
Well, they obviously didn't want to die all the way.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a cry for help. The other thing I didn't mention about the other part before was the letting go piece. We've talked about that before. How when you're in that
Hmm.
bad place, just letting go. Just letting
Hmm.
go. Not working so hard, not pushing yourself to get happier, just going, okay, that's fine, I give up, I let go. And it's amazing
Yeah.
how just that process of letting go frees things up because we're
And
not
your
pushing
point is
so
a
hard.
great one because that is what suicide often is. Suicide is often a cry for help.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm no expert on it, like, say, my wife is, who was a psychotherapist for about 10 years. She could tell us a lot more than I could. But from what I picked up just talking to her, so many people who are in that place, it isn't so much that they want to die. What they want is to stop the pain.
Right.
They're suffering some kind of pain. It could be physical pain, it could be emotional, mental, it could be
Yep.
spiritual. There's just some kind of pain, and the pain gets so excruciating that they can't put up with it anymore, and so they
Yeah.
just take this extreme
They're
step,
like, I just
hoping,
can't stand it.
yeah, hoping that somehow somebody will somehow rescue them from the pain. It isn't
And
necessarily
it's
that they don't want to keep
funny.
living; it's just they don't want to feel the pain anymore.
Exactly. And that's something I find even in my work a lot is when there is someone having suicidal thoughts, oftentimes it's because they're in pain. And if you
Yeah.
ask if we could manage this pain, would you still want to die? And they're like, no,
Mm,
even though they're dying, even though
right.
they're in the ultimate dying process. Yeah, you're
Exactly.
right. You're absolutely right about that.
Yeah. And when we understand that way, now ask the question again. So how come when people who are in pain, why do they want to survive and instead they try to die? Why is it that death is in our hands when people are still alive? Now when you look at it from the point of view of pain, now it becomes a question that answers itself. Because of course people don't want to live when they're in pain, but they want to live.
Yeah, yeah, I
Very
agree.
straightforward that way. Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
And
Yep.
there are people who do try to suicide who actually end up suicide or end up killing themselves,
But
which is
actually, when you
sad.
talk
But
about Abraham says we all are actually committing suicide.
in another, well, that's a really good
That's a
thing to
whole
say.
nother one.
Well, it is, yeah. I mean, we got a minute and a half left. There's no way we can cover that in a minute. But I mean, the whole idea of our health being completely in our control and our disease being created in our minds, all
Yeah,
disease being created in our minds, that's so mind-boggling. But I'll tell you
it
what,
is.
Patty, I'm getting to the point now where I buy into it 100%.
Oh yeah, I
And
do
and
too.
it's just I would if you had asked me that a year ago, I would have said, well, I'm not so sure about that. Now, yeah, I mean, it doesn't mean that I feel like I've mastered the whole thing because I don't feel like
Right.
that yet. But it's becoming more and more evident to me that we create all of our illness. And, please forgive me if you're in the medical community because I know I'm speaking blasphemy to you, but I really do believe that.
I don't
It's
know.
all
I think
created
a
in the
lot
head.
more people, even in the medical field, are shifting to that.
You think so?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely see that.
That's good.
I
That's a
think it
healthy
depends on
sign.
the person and what they were taught and
Yeah,
what they've learned in their
yeah.
lives, but definitely I see more of a shift towards that, towards getting that mind-body connection
Mm. Well,
and
that's a
knowing that.
good thing because the more that
Hmm.
happens, the healthier we all are. Because I mean, there are so many issues we can go off on in so many different directions here, and we have about 10 seconds to do them, so that's not going to happen. I just so much want to do that, and all of a sudden we're out of time. Like, no, 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 this hour is too short.
Pick it up. We'll pick it up next week.
We'll pick it up this time. But just to kind of round it off. I mean, we do actually have a minute or two because we started a little bit late, so I'll take advantage of that. I just am impressed with how the medical community is making that move. And it is
Yeah,
happening in some ways too slowly. But I'm seeing both sides of it with this medical issue that Louise has been dealing with. We're experiencing it head on. And it's encouraging to see the growth that's happening. It's encouraging to see the old doctrines being questioned by the people who are the guardians of them.
yeah,
It's a healthy thing going on, and there's a part of me that wishes that it would happen quicker, but there's also another part of me that says, pay attention. This is good stuff that's happening here. Don't just dismiss the stuff that you don't like. Pay
mhm,
attention to the fact that people are growing in this field, despite the fact that they have all the answers that have been taught to them. And I think what happens is people just realize I had all these answers that I learned as I became a doctor or an assistant or a nurse or whatever. And now I realize just how little I have learned so far. There's just so much more that I don't know, and that's a very healthy place to be, in my opinion.
absolutely.
Anyway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. Well, and it gives us a measure of control over our own
It
lives and
does.
our own
Oh,
disease
absolutely.
process or staying healthy
Yeah.
instead of depending on that outside source to make
Which
it
we
work for
need.
us. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think actually probably the least healthy thing is to be locked into a doctrine
Hmm.
because not only is it unhealthy for you, it's unhealthy for the patients you're working with. It's unhealthy for the family members associated with the patients you're working with. It's unhealthy in every single way. And people ultimately want health, including health practitioners. And
Oh,
I think
yeah.
that's what's driving it. That's what's driving the change. That's why it's kind of opening up. That's why there's this merger going on between Western and Eastern medicines. That's why there is this transition. It's an evolution in a sense that's going on. And it's a very
Hmm.
healthy thing. Really
Yeah,
good.
yeah. I
Um,
I concur with that.
good, good. Yeah, I agree. Um, I don't know what we're going to be doing next week. You and I have still to figure out what's going to happen with this transition. But on the off chance that this is your last official show with us, I just want to say thank you for the time that you put in being my co-host. I've
Oh,
treasured every moment of it,
me
and
too.
I'm going to
Thank
be
you so
sad
much for
when it's over.
inviting me. Yeah, thanks so much for
Oh,
inviting me on.
my pleasure. My pleasure.
Great.
Well, of course, we wish you nothing but the best and complete success. And you confided to me that you're looking at a change in your career, and I really hope that works out too. So.
Thanks.
Nothing but the
Yeah.
best to you. So thank you for doing
Thank
this.
you. Thanks, Walt. I agree.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm feeling it right here.
Oh. Well, we got to keep
And
in touch, definitely.
we will definitely do that. And once I know what's happening next week, I'll post something into the events calendar so that people in the Facebook group can know, what they're going to be tapping into. We will be doing something. I just don't know exactly what's going to be yet. So
Yeah.
kind of stay tuned to the events calendar.
All
And
right.
meantime, I'll say it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to talking to you again, Patty, whenever that is. I'm just not sure
Thank
when it's going to be.
you. Thank you. Me too. Me too.
We'll
And
see
don't
you all
forget to
next.
tell people how to tell people how to get in touch with us.
Well, go
Going all the
ahead.
way to them.
All right.
Go onto the LOAtoday.net website and join
Absolutely.
and subscribe, and then you can listen to the recordings afterwards, and you can join live. There you go.
See, now that's why you had to stay around to do this show, so you could be the person to do that this time. Normally it's me. You got to do it. That's good.
Exactly.
So thank you
All
to
right.
everybody who tuned in and gave your questions, and please join us next time. And all of you podcast subscribers listening after the fact, thank you for being listeners as well. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.